It's that time of the month again. New banners are coming, and we finally got info about what is going to be on them. The limited 5-star weapons and characters were already notorious ever since the stream dropped, but now we got info on the 4 stars featured as well, so I can make a full review on them. For context, the 4 stars featured are Kaveh, Fischl and Candace, while the 5-star featured are Ganyu and Baizhu. While Ganyu is definitely the outcast here, if you pull for Baizhu, you might come out of your polling session with a pretty good loot for Dendro teams in general. In particular, if your Fischl isn't at high constellations yet, then this banner gains more value, as one of Baiju's pros as a character is being a solid piece for Sino, Yae and Keqing Quicken teams, and Fischl is a staple on all of those. Specifically, Fischl's Constellation 6 is a sizable damage buff for her, as it adds a lot of small damage instances that gain a lot of value on Quicken teams, while also extending her odds duration per cast by 2 seconds, which again is quite valuable on Quicken rotations, where she often ends up casting odds twice. On Quicken teams in general, Fischl's Constellation 6 is around a 10 to 15% team damage gain depending on the exact composition, which is pretty meaningful for a single constellation. The other side of the spectrum for the banner is the bloom side. In fact, both Kaveh and Candace will mostly be useful for bloom rolls on your account, but that doesn't mean they synergize well together or with Baizhu. First and foremost, on Nilou Bloom teams and other Bloom teams in general, Nahida is always a best-in slot for one Dendro spot on the team, thanks to her guaranteed AoE Dendro application that really helps making the team consistent. This already makes the potential pairing between Kaveh and Baizhu subpar in comparison, since they're two mostly single-target units. Still, Kaveh and Nilou Bloom teams will be bound to be single-target focused in general, because they are compositions that will force you to run off-field Hydro appliers, as for most of the rotation you'll be using Kaveh on field. Best in slot Hydro options for that role will be Yelan and Xingqiu, who also happen to be mostly single-target focused. Basically, while in theory Baizhu and Kaveh won't be as good as Kaveh and Nahida for Nilou Bloom teams, in practice the structure of the team might accommodate them nicely, while also benefiting from all the survivability effects they bring to the table. In fact, Baiju's massive healing capabilities, combined with Kaveh's self-healing effects tied to the Bloom mechanics, will make it pretty much impossible for you to die. Considering Kaveh also doesn't benefit much from his own constellations on Nilou Bloom teams, the Baizhu side of the banner might be a nice opportunity to come out with a decent Nilou Bloom core with minimal Primogems expense. As I previously said, Candace is also just mostly an option for Nilou Bloom teams, while her kit could also seem useful for other uses thanks to her decent multipliers on the elemental skill and her unique Hydro Infusion buff for allies. In reality, her rotation damage output is not enough for her to fade greatly on any raw damage based team, and her Hydro Infusion isn't particularly helpful for most teams either. On the flip side, on Nilou Bloom teams, where raw damage doesn't matter much, she can find a spot. In particular, her Hydro application support is also useful here, and she's functionally a budget replacement for Kokomi, since Nilou Bloom teams that feature the latter also depend on Hydro on-field application to thrive. That said, compared to Kokomi teams, Candace teams are basically worse all the way, since not only Candace generates Hydro driving windows for shorter periods of times, but she's also more single target focused in general, and doesn't provide any healing. That means you'll necessarily need a healer in one of the other 2 slots. Baizhu can fill that role nicely, but the best option will likely be Yao, since on Nilou Bloom teams, she can use her elemental burst to full extent, and provide superior application as a result. In general, Yao Candace team are seen as viable options for Nilou, so if you like Candace, she has that going for her. On other Bloom teams, such as Hyperbloom and Burgeon, Hydro Infusion is not really needed, since they are teams that necessitate of Dendro on-field application to consistently generate a lot of blooms. For the 5-star characters, I've already talked about Baizhu plenty in the past, and I plan to make a final video on him before the banner comes out, but for now, as a summary for all the things I said in the past about him, he's a good Dendro option for basically all teams, as he provides healing capabilities and has decent supportive upside and application in general. In particular, teams that need a Dendro healer as the other slots are filled by other instrumental units would be Electro-based Quicken teams in general and Hyperbloom or Burgeon teams. Regarding Ganyu, I just talked about her yesterday in the last video I made, but long story short, she's still a pretty decent character, although hurt by the fact Freeze isn't very consistent anymore. When the team works, it still feels great, and Melt Ganyu is also a viable option, so it's not the end of the world. Just don't expect to pull the same overpowered character you'd get if you pulled for her a couple years ago. For the weapon banner, it's pretty bad, for the simple fact that 5-star weapons on it are not good. Baizhu's signature is just very underwhelming, as it's effectively a 5-star version of Prototype Ember, but the benefits it provides over it aren't really noteworthy. In particular, it's a more energy efficient option for Baizhu, while also giving him more HP and more damage bonuses. Since Baiju's raw damage is terrible, the last part isn't important. The first two things translate to more comfortable artifact stats management, but honestly, you can get more than enough HP with Prototype Ember while simultaneously not having particular energy issues on Baizhu. Amos is just an outdated weapon, as even on Ganyu it's worse than more recent limited bows, such as Polar Star, Hunter's Path, and Aqua Simulacra. Moreover, it's a standard pull weapon you can end up getting through Mist Pities and general banner pulls as well, so it's really baffling that MiHoYo thought this would be a fitting weapon to pair with the mediocre Baizhu signature weapon. The 4-star weapons on the banner show more promise, but mostly for niche uses. In particular, the weapon banner exclusives Aquamarine and Evenstar are quite rare, and it'd probably be nice for you to get a copy of either, but in reality they're not that important. Both provide attack buffs for the whole team based on the elemental mastery of the holder. By definition, they're weapons that work well on Dendro teams. Evenstar can even be used by the likes of Sucrose for more general uses, but honestly, the Catalyst weapon type is not lacking in good supportive options. It's a weapon that's mostly seen as usable on Ahida for Quicken teams with several Electro units, since Sino, Keqing, Yae and Fischl can all benefit considerably from attack buffs. Honestly, however, at low refinement it's basically a side grade compared to other options, like Hakushin Ring, and high refinement is probably a scenario you don't want to explore, if you don't want to end up with one of the infamous 5-star weapons featured on the banner. Aquamarine is even more niche, since there aren't really many units that can use it. Claymore units that fit on Dendro teams would be Deia on Burgeon or Burning, Dory on Hyperbloom, Razor on the Chaos Bloom team, and Baizhu on Quicken. For the latter, Aquamarine is not worth it over other more offensive options, and for the first three, Bloom and Burning teams aren't compositions that benefit from team-wide attack buffs in particular, so you really shouldn't go out of your way to pull for this weapon. All in all, the character banner is only solid if you want to pull for Baizhu, while the weapon banner is one of the worst we've ever gotten, so overall, this is a pretty below average banner cycle. I'm done for today. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time!